the world has been conditioned to think they can basically buy things and they have to make a ton of money to keep wasting their money buying luxuries. But I teach people in and out how to actually park their money in luxuries and live much better lifestyles than they ever thought possible without actually wasting or spending their money, but rather parking it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special edition of the Money Mondays podcast. As you guys know, 99% of the time I record inside of an RV motorhome traveling around the country. But we actually have someone in the car industry, so I should have my motorhome here. But I just found out that he happened to be in town. He was here from Florida, so we decided, let's knock out a podcast. So we're here in this amazing studio in Santa Monica, Brentwood area. Now, as you guys know, we cover 3 core topics: how to make money, how to invest money, how to give away to charity. On this podcast, typically our episodes are 32 to 40 minutes because the average workout is 45 minutes. The average commute to work is 45 minutes. So you'll be able to listen to this episode in under 40 minutes for your listening pleasure. Now, without further ado, I'm going to have our guest give us a quick 2-minute bio so we can get straight to the money.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. And real short, I am the ultimate guy when it comes to alternative assets: cars, watches, art, handbags, and everything else that comes with investing or putting money, or parking money, I should say, in those things. So the world has been conditioned to think they can basically buy things and they have to make a ton of money to keep wasting their money buying luxuries. But I teach people in and out how to actually park their money in luxuries and live much better lifestyles than they ever thought possible without actually wasting or spending their money, but rather parking it. And so I have a huge background in finance. I'm the founder of Exotic Car Hacks, Watch Trading Academy, and also have authored a ton of books on human awareness and how basically humans make decisions around their day-to-day lives.
Okay, so let's break that down. There's a lot of fun moving
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Exotic Car Hacks. What is that?
Exotic Car Hacks is a platform that since 2009 or so has been teaching people how to buy, trade, and sell exotic cars as a means of actually parking their money into alternative assets. Instead of actually looking at cars as liability, it's helping them look at them as an asset.
So a lot of times when we are preconditioned to think, oh, you buy a Lamborghini or you buy a Bentley, you buy a Mercedes, the second you drive off the lot, it's down 10%, 20%, or some
Correct.
number that people just make up.
Which usually leads people to not buying those things because they're usually looked at as a bad investment or as a bad purchase because it's like a kind of a piss your money away purchase, right? But the way we've reframed this, and we've been really good at helping people understand that not every car is created equal, and the right Lamborghinis, the right Ferraris will depreciate during their first year, but then ultimately hold flat at what we call a bottom cash value. And so we invented the bottom cash value formula, which is a formula that enables us to understand every single car in the market and which cars will actually have a stop in that depreciation based on time and will only depreciate based on miles and conditions, such as if you crash your car or not.
Sure.
And by identifying these cars, you're able to hop car to car, meaning 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, however you want, but you're able to ultimately buy a car or finance it however way you want. But once you put that money in the car, it doesn't actually depreciate. So even if you're making your payment, even if let's say you can't afford to buy a $250,000 car cash, you're still paying your monthly payment like a normal payment. But at the end, when you go sell your car, you actually recoup that payment because it's now equity in the car. And you ultimately, the car itself hasn't actually depreciated from the purchase price that you actually bought it for.
So there's some guys we know on social media like Dan M.I., Andy Frisella, et cetera, that might have 40, 50, 60 cars sitting in a garage that are not being driven. How are those on the depreciation scale?
So I know all those people really well. I actually bought one of Dan I.M.'s previous cars, and I'm very close friends with Andy, and I also personally collect cars. So those collections not only don't depreciate, they actually appreciate.
Okay.
So that's like the tier level of the collector spectrum where you're buying cars that are so rare and exclusive, like I personally do. That's not what I teach every day because that's a very small group of people.
Sure.
But you're buying cars so exclusive in specs, configurations, or hard to get models that they're immediately significantly in higher demand on the used market because most people can't get them on the new market. So that's a difference here because that's like, hey, I have all the money in the world and I'm just buying a ton of shit. But when you're normal and starting up, you usually look at most people will comfortably buy a Range Rover. They'll be like, oh, that's my luxury, kind of like, I bought myself a Range Rover or a really nice Volvo. For the price of that Range Rover, they could probably have a Lamborghini Urus or a Rolls-Royce Cullinan. Those are cars that they don't think they can afford usually when they buy the Range Rover because they think in conventional mindset of if the payment is $1,000 a month on the Range Rover. It's $3,000 a month on the Cullinan. So therefore, I can't afford a Cullinan. That's like $2,000 of extra money. But it's not true, though, because even though you're spending $3,000 a month maybe for the Cullinan, if you're buying the right Cullinan, that money is still parked in the car. But that Range Rover will keep depreciating over your lease back down to basically a wash of 40, 50K after like 3 years of ownership. But that same Cullinan, which you could drive the exact same car, might cost you 15 grand over 3 years. But it's a Cullinan. So you got to drive a Rolls Royce for less money than a Range Rover. Now, I wouldn't say you got to drive a Rolls Royce for less money than like a Honda Civic.
Sure.
But if you're going to buy a Range Rover anyways, why not get a Lamborghini Urus or Cullinan and save the money?
You said something in there that said they couldn't buy it on the new car market.
Mm-hmm.
So is that because something only has like 50 or 100 units, like people can't go buy it? Or
Yeah,
because Ferrari sometimes has a list of you have to have previously have a Ferrari to buy this Ferrari?
So both. Like the cars you mentioned earlier, those two people's specific collections are filled with cars that are very exclusive in nature. So they're not just a Bugatti, they're like a carbon fiber Bugatti, which is like a full exposed carbon final edition like Super Sport is incredibly hard to get. And it should have been ordered like 3 years ago. It finally came in. So it's a very unique type of clientele for these companies. And over time, these kind of levels, once they're reached, are just like, there only needs to be 10 of us wanting that car. And there's only 3 of us that have it, right? So amongst the 10, we all know each other. So it's like, oh, you got this. I wish when you don't want it, call me. You know? But so those cars are at that level. But generally speaking, like Ferrari has a list, obviously, for super VIP customers. And those cars are worth usually 2 to 3x of what you're paying for them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right as they come out, if those are the right cars. But sometimes there's also this misknowledge, which we teach our students not to fall for, that just because you walk in a dealership and a Ferrari dealer tells you, oh, that car has a list and you need to buy these other 5 cars before. That isn't necessarily true. That's just the game that Ferrari understands the common public believes to play. So they want to make their money. So they loop you into 3, 4 like average cars to sell you a decent car. But even that car would depreciate and wouldn't be the right car.
So you also mentioned the training academy. What are you training? How does it work? What's the concept behind it?
So watch training academy is something different because watches have, like, cars are what we call wealth preservation. So you can actually buy a car, preserve your money. And so buy a great car, enjoy a great lifestyle, not lose any money. And you don't have to rent it out. You don't have to create income or anything that has liability. On the other side, if you want to make money, we teach people basically how to take watches and turn them into a profit center. So watches have huge amounts of margins. So if you're in any type of investing ideology or in real estate, the reason people like real estate is because the asset class is usually safe. You buy it, and over time, even if you make a bad mistake, it'll generally pay off, like even if it's a 10-year return. But there's no liquidity to it, and it's very hard to constantly turn real estate unless, of course, you're in the business and you have capital and you're constantly like transacting on it. But you still have paperwork, you have to set up your LCs, you have all your 1031 exchanges. So it's very different from the watch game, which is completely unregulated, doesn't have any type of like paperwork associated with it. And it's the easiest thing to trade for margins that are anywhere from 20 to 30%, some cases as high as 40%, and can start as low as $2,000 a watch. So we're also trained to think watches, because they're exclusive and sold in boutiques, are generally expensive. When you walk in a mall, you'll see a Hublot boutique and you'll see like a $20,000 watch. And you'll be like, wow, I got to work my way up to owning a $20,000 watch. What people don't know is that Hublot is actually a $4,000 watch.
Whoa.
Exactly. $4,000 sold then for $20,000. So even if there's a discount, it sells you for like 18, you think you got a great deal of 16.
Sure.
But the real worth of that watch on the secondary market is 45 grand. So could you technically find that watch on the secondary market for 45 grand if I told you where to get it, how to negotiate it, and then turn around and sell it for 7 to 8 grand to another guy that thought paying 20 grand was the easy way out?
For sure.
It's basic arbitrage, right? But knowing which watches to buy, how to actually negotiate them down to the right price, and knowing which ones actually stay strong in value. So even if you can't sell it for 6 months, the value doesn't really go anywhere, is the key to learning how to make money with watches. And it's something that we have students doing this part-time. They're making $10,000 like a month. We have other students doing this full-time, making $3 million a year doing it. So like,
amazing.
Yeah, and they don't have any watch knowledge, but they just understand which models to go after and what to do with it.
So fascinating. So I used to own a jewelry store in my former life in 2008. I opened up in downtown San Diego by the stadium, by Petco Park. I called it Platinum Collections. I had Sammy the jeweler running the one side of it. We had these Dynamis watches, the floating diamond watches there. We were the
I've
first.
seen you wear this for a long time. Like
Yeah.
you've had this for a really long time. Yeah.
2008, we started selling them, and it was a fascinating business because the margins were nuts,
Huge, right? Like
especially on diamonds.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I could give.
I mean, the diamond market's taken a tank recently because of all the fake diamonds,
Right.
the lab grown diamonds, not the fake ones.
But I was able to give like 20, 30, 40, 50% off and still be making 20, 30, 40, 50%.
Exactly. And it's the same thing with watches. And a lot of people don't realize that. Like even major manufacturer of watches, their cost on the inventory they're selling to the boutiques, like Cartier watches are 30 cents on the dollar.
Well,
But how many people go in and buy Cartier watches for their wives, for their girlfriends, whatever, and they think they're like, oh my God, like I got a great deal. I got 10% off on a new watch. That watch that was 10 grand a Cartier, 30 grand a Cartier, only cost 30 cents for that manufacturer. Then they sold it to the store to 50 cents, and the store made 50 cents in margin. So that's what they make their money plus tax, whatever. But when they're on the used market, they cost less than 50 cents on a dollar. So, and they're brand new. So they're just like left over and they're not sold at the store. And a lot of people think, well, what if I buy it from a third party and it's not real or it's fake? But it doesn't work that way anymore. There's so many authorized and really reliable jewelers in the world that are selling secondary watches. And they're real and they're not like issued. They have the same paperwork, the same warranties, the same everything. And they're just sold at 50 cents on a dollar.
so if someone out there is listening and wants to learn from you, are they someone that's like wants to actually own a jewelry store, own a website to sell jewelry, or they're just someone that's in the mix?
Zero. So the reason we started this was because we realized people want luxuries.
Sure.
Like it wasn't about teaching people how to start jewelry stores. Like I could care less for that. That's a real business. It requires all the logistics, the licensing, none of that. Yeah, none of that stuff. The point was, if you're a normal human being, you'll technically aspire to make money. They're listening to Money Mondays. They want to make money. The point is, if you learn to make money, typically you want to make money because you want to improve your lifestyle. First, you improve your house, then you improve your car, then you tend to indulge in travel, luxuries, etc. My argument has always been, no matter who you are, if you aspire to do great things, you're going to legitimately end up in a position to buy great things. And when you buy them, there's only two ways you buy them. Either you buy them in a fashion that allows you to keep buying them without losing money, and in many cases, turning even your hobbies or things you want into a money center, or you end up creating expenses all the time, and ultimately these expenses never come back, and you have to keep making even more money to keep upgrading your lifestyle. So we all know that even our dream car is only our dream car for a very short period of time. Like we know that there's another car we'll want more. We know when there's a cool watch we like, there's a better watch we'll eventually want more, or a second one.
Yeah.
So the argument is, you're going to divorce these things anyways. They're not like there to be like loved forever. So when you buy them in a manner that allows you to make money off of them when you get rid of them, instead of actually lose money every time you do it. This is one of the key things that athletes don't learn. Because if you think about like someone who doesn't have money training, typically comes into the game, the first thing they go, I got $100 million, I got to buy cars, I got to buy this. What if they bought these cars right? And at some point they said, oh man, I overspent, I need to get my money back out of the car. And instead of saying I paid $600K for a car, I got $300K back, they said I paid $550 for a car, I got $540K back.
Amazing.
Right. So it's like, okay, so I made a mistake. I shouldn't have bought that car. Maybe but I didn't lose that money. It was just sitting there in the right car. And I didn't want it now. For any reason, like I only need 2 cars instead of 10. It is what it is. So we have been brainwashed as a society to think clearly that our job is to make money, so we spend money. And one of the things we've been teaching people since 2010 is you don't need to spend money to have lifestyle. You can learn to park money. And while you can't park money in travel or in food, like if you go to restaurants, money's gone. At the very least, the largest purchases you make, like your home, your car, and your jewelry, and even the handbags you buy for your wife, your girlfriend, whatever, or for yourself, those things can be places you park money and recycle that money over time. And people really, this is the interesting thing then, like people know this already when it comes to housing. There's not one person that buys a piece of real estate thinking it's a bad purchase, like I'll never get my money back. There are people who overspend on real estate, but they'll never think like buying a house is a disaster. Like, why did I buy a house? It's stupid. They'll say, oh, well, in a couple of years, if I don't like it, I'll upgrade it or get rid of it, whatever, get my money back. But they don't learn to think that way when it comes to luxuries, because society has brainwashed us to think that all luxuries are basically expenditures and you're throwing your money away. But there has been, especially post-COVID, a significant shift in the amount of luxury goods in the marketplace. Like there's a ton more Lamborghinis today than there were 10 years ago, ton more Rolexes on people's hands than there were before. And the key areas like California, Florida, Texas, and these large states where people are like businesses booming, et cetera, people are spending money.
Sure.
Right? And that's great. You should want that. You should want to aspire to make more money so you can live a better lifestyle. But the argument is, why not learn to actually not, we're never saying to someone, don't buy these things, like they're bad things. They're amazing. Everyone should experience what it's like to wear a 100K watch. Everyone should experience what it's like to drive a $500,000 car. But what if you could experience it and it didn't have to be a financial burden? That's the difference. And while it sounds really good to be true, and people are like, well, you got to learn how to really sell cars and buy cars and be a dealer, you really don't. Like, this world exists, and because people are so alienated from it, they assume it's not for them, or they're going to have to pay cash or go and work really hard, or it's a bad expense. But it's really not. Like, I mean, look, there are kids out there who know nothing about watches making 700, 800K part-time from their houses, trading 5 to 15 watches a month. Okay. Like, what I'm saying is, let's assume someone's like,
it's amazing.
Exactly. It's an amazing, I mean, 800 grand is a lot of money. You know, like, even 300 grand is a lot of money. Let's not even use big numbers. 10 grand a month is a lot of money.
For sure.
It depends on what your aspirations are. But if you have a normal job and you're working at a coffee shop or something and you have $1,500 saved, you can literally take that $1,500, buy your first watch, let it grow into its own thing, similar to a trade you would do in the stock market. Except the difference is the stock can disappear to nothing and it can just keep going down and you don't even understand what's happening. But a watch is on your wrist. Mm-hmm. So it's opening doors as you meet people, you're getting into new peer groups, and you're making the same money you would in the market. And it's easier to trade in and out of without having to wait for bumps and dumps and, you know, anything else.
What are your thoughts on the exotic car rental market and like basically high-end Turo? Like, have you ever thought about the like Lamborghinis and Rolls Royces where people renting them out?
Terrible. So this is the big misconception in the world of cars. People believe that the revenue associated with cars has to be when you share them, similar to Airbnb, and Turo makes that very easy. You can rent stuff. If you want to make money renting cars, buy Corvettes, put them on Turo. It's cheap, it's easy. Buy a couple of ones, even if they've been salvaged, hit before, repaired, and put those on Turo. The amount of money that will come to rent that on a continuous basis and just keep giving you money, even if there's an accident there and there, the net positive will be better over time. It's a risky business because generally you have to have separate insurance. You try to put it on people's insurance or Turo's insurance, but there are very high limitations there when it comes to exotic cars, not so high on cheaper Corvettes and Audis and things like that. So if I was going to try to make money in the rental business on Turo, I would never rent out an exotic. You have to understand that when an exotic gets hit in an accident, it's worth 20 to 25% less. So right. The moment you Turo your car and you're like, oh yeah, I made like $5,000 and I didn't do anything because someone, it's done. You know, like it's done and the money's gone. So you want to avoid that at all costs. And one of the big misconceptions, again, when you're in a position to own something like that, like generally own it, you don't want to lend it to people. Like I've never seen someone that's like, I've made enough money to buy my Rolls Royce, and in order to pay for the payment, I want to lend it to a complete stranger for 2 days out of a month. No, nobody wants to do that. Like nobody will do that. Like generally people that do that is they don't understand business and they only see business in a linear manner. That's like, well, if I buy the car and I have a $5,000 payment and then I rent it out for 5 days out of the 30 days, well, that's $5,000. Like my payment's paid off. But they don't look at the liability, the asset costs, the issues with if they get kicked off Turo or they don't cover the insurance. So they put themselves in a bad like financial position. And I would never, ever, ever tell people that renting their car is the way to minimize their expenses.
Are there certain assets that you want to buy and just hold forever? Are there certain things you just hold?
You can hold, like I have a very extensive personal watch collection and a very extensive personal car collection, very similar to Andy Frizzell's collection. Like I have a lot of cars from Bugattis to like Porsches, rare, old, new. And one of the things that's really key is once you get through this process of buying and driving your cars, you obviously get richer in life. Like you obviously make more money. You get 10 years older, you have more adult money, right? Than when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you have more serious money. You might build a business, things might change. Or you might be in a position where, hey, for 10 years, you've done this strategy we talk about, and you didn't actually waste money. So even though you're making more money, right, it keeps accumulating. Yeah. And at some point, it makes sense to switch from this idea of, hey, I'm going to drive a new car every 2-3 years and get in and out, to I'd like to own 2 to 3 nice cars, like a Porsche, a Ferrari, and maybe like a Range Rover. And you can start buying cars that historically go up in value every single year for the next 30 years. They'll never go down. And they won't always go up every single year like 2% or anything. But over a 10-year period, historically, they've never not gone up at least 10, 15%. So, and there are bumps when they might go up 30, 40% if it's a very rare car, depending on the type of car you buy. And they don't have to be expensive. In the last like maybe 2-3 years, we've seen cars that were 100K go up to 250, 300 because they're becoming collectible and they're older and there's less of them on the market. Or suddenly a celebrity ends up buying a more vintage Ferrari. A lot of people are like, oh, that is a collectible car we never looked at. And there's only 10 left. They quickly get off the market. Now they come back at double the price, you know?
So there's a lot of memes and news articles this last few months in particular about Birkin bags. Now all these girls love to post about these news articles saying that Birkin bags are actually beating the S&P 500 as an investment.
And the same articles were there about watches in 2020, 2021, and 2022. So that's a marketing strategy, but yeah.
Talk us through that.
Okay, so it's very true that the right handbags, and particularly Hermes bags from the Kelly and the Birkin, not all sizes, but the majority of the smaller ones from 28 and down, will typically be worth more than MSRP, brand new, as soon as you buy them. Usually 2 to 3x, depending on the color, the leather, and the styles. And it's very true that with the price increases of luxuries, so like you've seen this over regarding tariffs, you've seen this over the last like 3 years because of the COVID and supply chain issues, you notice that generally speaking, like manufacturers will raise their prices because the cost of goods go up. Well, that stabilizes the used market to basically not move or also move up with it. So if you had a bag that was 2 times MSRP, meaning that brand new came out for $14,000, but used was maybe $28,000 on top of that in profit, right? So it was basically selling for like 30 to 40 grand, right? That bag, if the price increase of the bag goes from 14 to 16, will now go, instead of being 30 to 40, will go like 33 to 43. You know, so it'll move up over time. So the cost of entry gets more expensive. And it's very true because bags are another asset class that hasn't depreciated over the last 10, 15 years. But Hermes bags have gained popularity, but even pre-popularity were so scarce in certain colors that they end up being worth a lot of money on the secondary markets. Now, if you don't have the access to the list at Hermes to get a bag, you can still buy used bags at the right, like they're used, but like brand new, meaning they're new in box, but they're not sold at the store. That's what I mean by used. And you can still make those bags literally like turn into a profit center by wearing them for free for 3, 4, 5 years and maybe making 5, 6 grand at the time of sale. And we teach that in one of our courses too, called Secure the Handbag.
Secure the handbag. That's great.
Yeah, we have courses on cars, watches, art, and handbags, as well as real estate. So we basically teach people how to take any of the expenses that their lives require them to have in the luxury segment and turn them into a money-making opportunity instead.
What are your thoughts about wine bottles?
So that gets a little bit trickier. So art and wine are a very acquired taste, and it's a very specific type of segment that's very hard to transact in. Actually, you're a case study in one of my courses too for the card market. You know, because you do all the
Cards and coffee.
Yeah, exactly. So cards, I was actually talking about this in one of our webinars, is that a lot of people ask me, well, what about cards? What about sneakers? What about these other things?
Sure.
Right? They're all collectibles, and technically they could be sold. So it goes back to the wine thing, so you'll kind of loop into this. So the reason sneakers really don't fit into the model we talk about is because sneakers have no utility, because once the utility is used, meaning once you put them on, the value is gone, right?
Sure.
So they're gone. Like you buy those like expensive sneakers.
I'm not buying used shoes, guys. Yeah.
Right, like so you're buying them, right? Like, and
yeah.
you understand they're worth a lot of money, but once you use them, that worth basically disappears. So it's almost like you can buy something, it's arbitrage. You buy it cheap, you look, it might go up, you buy it. So it's different because we talk about the utility of things is just as important as the investment. So the difference between investing in a stock versus investing in a car is that you want a car. You're going to buy a car anyways. You want a watch on your wrist. Right. You're not forced to. You're going to buy it anyways. So the utility is very, very important. And cards specifically don't necessarily have a utility in that manner because they can be used. You can't like throw a Pokemon card at someone for something. But the main thing that's really important about cards is the one piece of it that's become very transactional over the last couple of years is the institution of it, which means that people like you have basically opened shops that enable people to trade these things and have liquidity for them, right? Like, so they can
I'll
come
buy
to
it.
you.
I'll buy it.
Right. You'll put a number on it. Now, that number might be lower than what the market is because you're like, I'm in the business of making money, so I'll buy it for this, I'll sell it for that.
All right. I pay 70 cents on the dollar.
Exactly. And cars have become that because of people like you, because they're becoming more institutionalized where people can trade them. So wine also has its model like that, but it's not as open. And because it's such a scarce amount of people, it doesn't work in what we talk about. So it's similar to art too. You could have art that's like basically $5,000 art that's worthless, that you're buying that has no value because you like the picture. Or it could be blue chip art, like you might be buying something that you like I want to say like a brainwash or something that you're like entry level, still has some kind of tradability because people want it. And you might say, okay, I paid like $5, but it always will be worth $4. Like, so it's always has some liquidity. And that's what we mean by a store value. So you have to find things that have a continuity of institution being willing to pay for it so that you're never overpaying and have huge drops of like 50 to 80% because you're just buying because you want it and nobody really wants it but a pawn shop, you know?
Yeah, in the sports card market, I like supply and demand. So I focus on cards that are a PSA 9 or a PSA 10, which is the grading company, that have a limited supply. The problem is, a lot of people I just want that Ken Griffey Jr. card from the 80s. Yeah, but they made tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of that card. That's why it doesn't have sustainable value. But like the Michael Jordan rookie card, the PSA 10, well, we know there's exactly this many units all over the world, and the supply keeps getting smaller. Because
of course. So the value keeps going up, of course. And it's the same thing about those collector cars you talked about. You know, when they're only making 5 Bugattis and you got 15 people wanting them, in 5 years, 2 of them will be crashed too. There'll be 3 of them, you know, and there'll be people that'll never sell them. And there's that one guy that'll drop it and he'll be like, I'll sell mine for 5 times what I paid for it. And someone will be like, okay, I'll pay it, you know?
So there was, Logan Paul bought a card for $5 million.
I think I saw that on social.
Yep.
Yeah.
So my friend Travis and I, we bought 20% of it. So from his $5 million, we bought $1 million of that card. Within 10 seconds, he got an offer for over $7 million from a big auction house. And he turned it down, obviously, because he's rich and it's Logan. And now, because he's marketed so much, he iced it out and wears it at wrestling matches, etc. Now there's some really big, interesting offers that have come because of that card being a one of one. In the car market, watch market, etc., how much does it matter to go after things that have limited supply?
Significant. I mean, but remember, in the watch market, there's also this illusion of this heavy illusion of scarcity. So if you go to a Hublot boutique, you'll see they'll say, this is one of 10 units. But 10 units of something nobody wants is still worthless. So it has to be very specific. Like if you said, hey, I bought this really rare Ferrari everybody wants, and this is the only one that's baby blue, it would bring significant money. But if you said, I bought this Ferrari that nobody cares about, and I decked it out in this beautiful pearl white, and there's only one in the world, it would still depreciate 50% in value. So the argument is, if you're buying the goods people want, generally, and you're getting the scarcer versions, meaning the versions that are even more exclusive because of the dial, because of the, like maybe the size, the dial, or if it's a car, it could be the options on it, the color, the specifications, then those things will be astronomical like art. Because cars and watches are an expression of status. So people want exclusivity. People want to be able to say, I have this and you can't get it. So people come to them and go like, oh, this is beautiful. Like, let's talk about it. So the rarer, the more expensive, as long as people want it.
On the storage and safety side, so I bought cars, but I only have a 2-car garage, or I bought watches, but I live in an apartment. Are there storage facilities or safety deposit boxes? Are there ways to store stuff like this?
So yes, I mean, you can use safety deposit boxes. I know LA is a little bit difficult when it comes to watches and things because there's a lot of crime and theft. So, I mean, first off, I wouldn't tell you to walk around with a $300K watch if you didn't know where you were going or there was a risk that you could get robbed. But you can do safety deposit boxes in banks when it comes to putting watches away. For cars, there are safe storage places that are primarily focused on storing exotics, fine wine, art, etc. And they're car condos, we call them, that are usually available in every city or state. Or you can even buy like a very cool, very cute warehouse and very small warehouse in a good part of town, put a lot of security on it, and end up actually tax deducting that in its own right, as a business. But that's a whole story for another time. But the core of it is most major cities where these things are generally used and there's a large enough audience have things like car condos and safety deposit boxes where you can leverage for that.
So let's say I'm a 26-year-old kid. I saved up some money. I bought 3 watches. Let's say I bought one for 15 grand. someone offers me 20 or 22 or 24. How the heck do I decide when it's time to sell?
So my view on that is you always take the money as long as the replacement cost is less than what the offer you're getting. So whenever I gauge, like, should I sell what I have today? Am I going to miss it? Or like, am I getting maximum money? I usually ask myself, if I was going to buy it myself today, knowing what I know that people don't know, could I buy it cheaper than this person's offering me? So if a jeweler came to me and said, hey, I'll give you $100K for your watch, and I'm like, but I can't really replace it for less than 110, and it would take a year, then I go, well, that's not really worth it, because that offer is probably going to be on the table all the time. But if someone came and gave me 150 and said, hey, I'll give you like 130 because I really want it and I don't want to go look for it, then I'd be like, okay, well, I can replace it probably for 95 to 100 grand. So I'm just going to go and like get that deal done, even if I don't replace it immediately. If I change my mind and I can't find it for 80 grand and really make that work, I can always buy it back for 100 and basically still make a profit today. Now, if it's a one of one, like I've sold a one of one Ferrari that I designed that was baby blue, that was like stunning and brought the world record for the most expensive Ferrari pista sold ever. So when I sold that car, it was a one of one, and I regretted it. Then I bought it back again because the owner sold it to me.
Oh, really?
And I sold it again because I made 200 grand every time, like 3 times in a row. So I made 600 grand on the car. So I felt really good about it. I was like, oh, I made 600 grand on a car that was like 400 to begin with. Yeah. So the argument was, well, I made 600 grand, drove a car for a year, and the car was 400. That's amazing, you know? But that car's irreplaceable. So if I was, back when I sold it, I was in the position I'm today where I'm rich enough to say, I don't care. I'm going to keep all these cars forever. It doesn't even matter. I'll keep buying 5 cars every single 6 months. Then I wouldn't have sold that car because that money had come every time I sold that car, meaning the value is probably going to stay the same no matter the mileage or the time because of its rarity.
So there's a famous quote, don't get high on your own supply.
Mm-hmm.
How do you not do that when you get a cool car and you're 26 years old? How do you not go drive that Lamborghini?
Well, you will, and that's okay. You can drive it. That's the whole argument is this is a progressive training program to begin with, so we're not completely disconnected from the fact that people aren't buying Lamborghinis to flip them, and we're not telling people to flip them. Our program is designed for people to buy their car, enjoy their car for a whole year or two, and then get rid of the car. The argument is not that you're going to flip the car for a profit. The argument is in the beginning stages, it's a wealth preservation strategy, not a wealth creation strategy. So we want you to get high off of your car. I want you to network with it. I want you to meet more people. I want you to become a better marketer of your business because of it. I want you to make more money and want a better Lamborghini next time. So when you upgrade, you didn't lose all the money in your car and then go to the next car. You just parked that money. You drove your car, leveraged it. Now, the extra effects of having that on your life probably made you a lot more money than the car cost you to begin with. But then you take that money and you move it to the next car. And the argument is the $200K you paid for that Huracan is still in the Huracan. So when you go buy the Aventador, well, you now have $200K of that money that's not gone and like depreciated. And you can buy a nicer car and you can drive that too. Like the argument is not that you should not use your car. You should collect it and it's the only way you make money. All of our programs, specifically with every single exotic car, teach you exactly which cars you can drive, how many miles. So it tells you like, hey, if you have a Lamborghini, you can drive it 2,000 miles. But if you have this Ferrari, you can probably drive it 5,000 miles. This Rolls Royce, you can drive it 7,000 miles. So like, it's almost like re-understanding how leasing works, except without the loss in the payment. You know, leases are pretty expensive, so they're just a huge scam. But the whole idea is that it's the same ideology where you know exactly what your loss is. And you also understand what mileage restrictions you could put on these cars. And you can choose, like, I have 4 different SUVs, so I can switch between my cars. And that way it never really adds up terrible miles. But I drive the shit out of all my cars. So I drive all my Bugattis, crazy $3 million cars, and I don't care. Like, but because I have 10, I can put mileage differently on each of them. And even if one loses, let's say I buy a $3 million car and I lose 50 grand because I overdid the mileage, my other $3 million car will make me 200 grand. Mm-hmm. So it's like the offset of doing that. But as you get better in the game, and obviously as you get richer in life generally, you make better money decisions because you understand that concept.
So you said something, and I want you to look at this camera over here and explain why are leases a huge scam?
Okay, so leasing is a huge scam because you're buying the worst depreciating cycle of a car. What that means is when you go do a lease, they give you a down payment and they give you a monthly payment. And they tell you that monthly payment can be tax written off, so it makes sense for you to buy that car. The problem is if you do the math on the down payment and all the fees you paid by the time you own the car and the mileage you put on, This will tell you that over the course of the 3 years, 2 years, or 12 months you own the car, you lost, for example, on a Lamborghini, anywhere from 20, 30, 40, 50 grand, depending on what kind of car you bought. So think about that. You drove the car with limited number of miles, 2,000, 3,000 miles, whatever, over the course of 3 years, and you lost 50 grand no matter what. Now, at the time, the actual car is bought back by Lamborghini. It's worth more. So you turning in the car makes the car worth more today because of the mileage being low. And on the used market, the car only depreciated 10% its first year, but your residual was like 30% less. So you gave up all this money and the manufacturer remixed the money. So basically they're guaranteeing volume out of cars by creating a bunch, and they're putting them out in the market, and you're buying the worst depreciation cycle disguised as a tax write-off and disguised as you don't really have an issue with any kind of like maintenance or repairs. So that's why you want to get a lease. Most cars today are made with Bosch parts. Very few Lamborghinis break down. Very few Ferraris break down if they're driven properly. So while most people believe exotic cars constantly deteriorate, depreciate, break down, that isn't true. And most real owners will tell you they can drive plenty of exotic cars without ever having an issue. But lease companies have worked very hard to disguise this idea that a tax write-off is better. And if you think about it, if you lose 50 grand in your write-off and that means you lost 30 grand instead, it still means you lost 30 grand. I will teach you to drive the exact same Lamborghini and lose 5 grand. So the argument is, what's better, that you didn't write off the 5 grand you lost, or that you lost 50, you wrote it off, and it ultimately netted you 30 loss?
So someone's out there, they've started making money, saving money, wealth preservation. They're doing all these things, and they finally got a real chunk of capital now, and they want to go into real estate. What are your thoughts about real estate? What parts of it do you teach?
So we teach real estate in a very different manner. Like we don't really teach real estate investing. There's people that are probably better at that than I do. I don't really look at it from a sense of like which houses do you buy, create income, or anything else. Because I'll tell you this: in the game of watches and cars, we make so much money off of such little capital and no leverage needed, no bank loans needed, no bank ties, no need to take out a $10 million loan to get out of that $20,000 a month in hopes of blah, blah, blah. So we don't really think that's a viable strategy in wealth creation. And we think that it was a viable strategy 10 years ago because these other alternative markets didn't exist as much. Where I think there's a huge opportunity for people to play in real estate no matter what. Like I'm a big proponent for owning your own home, owning your own office, like buying commercial and residential real estate, as long as it has utility. Which means that there's a lot of opportunities in buying commercial real estate where you can build really good business out of it instead of just renting it out and leasing it out to someone else. I think taking on so much leverage to create such little income with so much problem in between if something happens is just too high of a risk when you have other alternative ways of making money. So what we teach is how to select homes or commercial buildings in areas that are likely to have accelerated appreciation based on changes of demographic over the next, let's say, 6 or 12 or 24 months, and therefore putting you in a position where you can buy a building and ultimately let it keep going up in value, use it for your business, and then choose to get out of it. Like I'll give you an example of my own unit. I bought myself like 18,000 square feet, like a location in the middle of Boca Raton, and Boca Raton is a very hard place to find good locations for like car storage and things like that. So I wanted a place to house my 35 car collection. And I was like, this is impossible to find here. So it literally took me a year, but when I found the building for $5 million, I immediately bought it. I renovated for 500 grand and I'm using it as my office. I have gotten like probably about 15 to 20 offers to sell that building for $7 to $10 million within 3 weeks of moving in, all the way to today, because these type of buildings don't exist, meaning they're very hard to come by. So it's almost the same thing with my personal house. So like I bought this 10,000 square feet house with a 10-car garage, and no one has that anywhere. Right. And it's brand new, and it's like this crazy design building. So when you buy stuff that's really exclusive, hard to get, and unique in nature, they typically target a very unique buyer. So it's not as generally for everybody because it doesn't fit within like what the evaluation or the appraisals of a building are. But if someone has a 35 car collection or a 20 car collection and they have nowhere to put it, they're not so much looking at what will the bank appraise this building at. They're like, if I don't buy this building, I don't have a building. So that's what we teach people, how to get ahead of that.
All right, so we talked about the make money side, the investing money side. Let's talk about the giveaway money side on charity. Why do you think it's important for people to have some type of charity component to their life or for their family?
So I think there's a couple of things there. So I'm not personally, actually, this is a good discussion because I'm not a huge charity guy either. And I'll tell you a little bit about why. I'm a big believer that you directly impact your community in the ways you can do your best. And a lot of times people try to change that by donating money instead of actually participating. And I think there's a lot of participation that can be done in every community globally, where participation, in my opinion, holds more weight than donation. So I think donation is a good form when you can lack participation, you don't have time to, and you want to support a cause. But generally speaking, I'm a big proponent for participation over donation.
I like it. So where can people find you across social media? Where can they find the different things that you've been talking about today?
The easiest way to get more information, if you want to just learn how to park assets instead of spend, is to go to learnfrompj.com. Super easy place where all my books and courses are available for anyone that wants to learn. We've been teaching since 2007. Wow. Most of our platforms, it's quite a long time. Wow. Most of my platforms have been around since then. A few new ones come in. We'll teach you everything from cars, watches, art, even travel, how to lower your cost with points correctly. But everything's at learnfrompj.com.
Very cool. All right, guys, this is a fascinating episode. Not our typical episode of asking certain questions because the luxury assets that he's been talking about, we've just had in our minds for so many years that it's automatically a liability. And he's explaining and he's teaching about how to make it into an actual investment and wealth preservation. The whole point of the Money Mondays is you have to have discussion with your friends, family, and followers about money. We all grew up thinking it's rude to talk about money. I think that's ridiculous. We have to be able to have blunt discussions the way he was just explaining. How much does this cost? How much did I invest in this? How much did I waste on this? How much did I spend on this? How much did I make on this? And it's blunt and straightforward so we can learn for ourselves so we don't get screwed on things. So we might be able to buy things better. We might realize, hey, maybe we shouldn't lease a car because of what he explained. You have to have a discussion with your friends, family, and followers about money. Thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing. We'll see you guys next Monday on themoneymondays.com.